Hi, welcome back to Event Ready Podcast, where we talk about our roller coaster ride of being a live event artist.
If you're a painter, calligrapher, or illustrator, this podcast is for you.
Because we're about to uncover the secrets, the stories, and the struggles of the industry. This is your host, Michelle.
And I'm Talisa.
And I'm Isabel.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We are on episode 7, season 2. Last time we talked about low season, and now we're talking about the difference between being a full-time artist versus part-time. As some of you know that so Michelle and I are full-time and Isabel is a part-time, so she has another day job as well. So we're gonna share our experience, and we're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about our different uh
Points
POVs
of
and
view. Yeah.
points of views and pros and cons and debunk some assumptions in this episode about both sides. So, Michelle, do you want to spill the tea?
Yes. Okay, so whether you are full time or part time, your freelance journey is unique. No one's career path is better than another.
Agreed.
Yes. And you
Um,
get to hear some stories from us.
yeah. Let's talk about the terminology freelancing
Mhm.
first. So we consider ourselves as a freelancer in the live event industry because that's how it's like. It's a short-term contract for 1 or 2 events, and that's what we call it freelancing. And it does offer some flexibility, independence, but it also comes with challenges and some rewards. But for this specifically, we're gonna talk about how different it is being a full-time artist versus part-time. If you're maybe in a situation where you're deciding, do I want to stay part-time or do you want to go full-time? Maybe this will be a very helpful episode because there is no right or wrong answer. Everybody is just has um different positions, different experience. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you're not making that big decision between like career paths, I would hope that the discussion that we're gonna have will just, you know, help us understand each other a little bit better and, not maybe make assumptions about each other based on whether or not we have another job. Because I think, we when we get to know each other on Instagram, right? We don't we
Yeah.
don't know anything about each other other than the art that we make. And then usually the topic comes up like, "Oh, do you do this full time?" Or and then if you answer one way or another, sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's not. But when we find out the answer, I find that we don't ask more questions, right? I find that we don't say like, "Oh, what's that like?" Or like, "Oh, tell me about your personal like circumstances." We just kind of go like, "Okay, that's
Ah,
cool." And then in our minds, we just like make up all these stories about that person and we don't get to know like what that means for that person. And you're like, "Oh, well, you're full time. I can see because this and this and that." But they didn't say that. You said that in your head, right?
yeah.
So I think that like a discussion like this is really helpful for the community just to let's just get to know each other better, you know?
Yeah, I like that. And it's not always like you want to make up stories and assume things, and then it becomes like a income thing, and you think about that. And like I don't like my it's not always that for some people. And it's just so interesting to hear like the differences. And I'm really excited to talk about the assumptions because they're so true. Like your mind just wants to populate it with these things that you've heard before, but that's not really what happens. So
Oh yeah.
we get to talk about all of those things today.
Yeah. So let's jump into the examples of portion of this. episode, let's first talk about full time. Um, by definition, it would be about maybe 30 plus hours a week, not necessarily having to be just doing events. It could be like, including the admin, marketing, and all that. Um, you, the hours that you're using to on your business is usually around 30 plus hours. And most likely that you rely on this income um, for this job. And let's talk about some false assumptions of being a lifetime, being a full-time artist.
Mhm. Uh,
So,
False or
yeah,
not, it's an assumption, right?
yeah,
So yeah, sometimes we think, for full timers, you have a spouse that can provide the stable income for you. So, you're able to have that safety net, and it makes it easier for you as the artist or freelancer to take that risk of going full time. Um,
but
yeah,
it's not always the
it's
case.
not. Um,
um,
I just want to share something real quick. For
yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
We need health insurance, and if you have to pay health insurance like out of pocket, it's super expensive. Like you're looking at a lot, especially here in the US. So, for me, it's partially true, but ours is more so just for health insurance purposes. I get covered under my husband's benefits, so it's really nice to have. But it's different for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, some couples, they're both could be freelancing. I've definitely met so many couples who are like that. Like one is, I don't know, an artist, the other one is a photographer, something like
Mhm.
that. And they just work very differently, very different schedules, and or even they just works out that way. And some people, you know, the it doesn't matter who the sole income earner. It could be the freelancer, or it could be the one who has the stable in like job. So it's just different. But it's not, it's never the assumption that, oh, because your partner is,
Mhm.
have a secure 9 to 5 job, that's why you're okay to go full time. It's not always the case. So
Mm.
let's not make that assumption. I personally, I'm the same like Michelle. Like my husband is an engineer. He has his normal full-time job, but if he wants to go freelancing something else, I will totally support that too. So it's like, we both agree that like if whatever we enjoy doing, whatever we have passion for, like we should go for it. So it just happens he happens to be an engineer and I happen to be an artist. I used to be a part-timer of artists, and then now it's full-time. But we'll talk about like the journey later.
Mhm.
Um what's another assumption that we have as a full-timers that you think, Michelle?
So, you know, a lot of people think because we were able to go full time, that what we do in our business makes us more successful than someone who's just doing it part time, who takes jobs here and there. And they assume that we make enough money to quit our job so
Mhm.
that we can do
Yeah.
this. And when I went full time a few years ago, and it was very glamorized on Instagram. Like, wow, you must be so making so much income. You must be so booked that you can go full time. But that's not always the case. Like, it's not always about money and the income that we
Yep.
make. Um, yes, we do need it to pay our bills and survive, but that's not always the driving reason of why we do things. And if we are always chasing money, then you're never going to find something that you truly enjoy. So, yes, I mean, if people do things for all different reasons, but it's not always the truth.
Yeah, money isn't always the main reason why people go full time. So personally, I went full time not because of money. It was purely because of my mental health. So my mental health was going down the hill in corporate. I couldn't take the pressure, the stress from that job. and I had to go full time, knowing that I actually didn't have that many client base at the time, but I knew that like the uh the struggle, the challenges of building a business in the career, the path that I would enjoy and have passion about is much easier than doing something that I'm not passionate about, that I'm just not mentally happy to do it. So I knew that it was going to be very hard to go full time, that it's gonna I was probably going to be working like 70 hours a week to network, to market, to do admin and all that stuff. And but I knew that this was something that at least I enjoy, that um I had to talk about it with my husband too. Like, obviously we like, like, what? It was so bad that we will work out with whatever budget that we have. Like I didn't have any income for like the first 3 months, but we worked it out. Um Obviously this like after 5 years, it has completely changed. I've completely grown and I'm consistently booked and whatnot. But um it was not an easy path. And I definitely like I know that a lot of there's always a lot of those coaches that are saying like, oh, quit your day job and all that. I would be highly, highly critical when you see people marketing that kind of coaching or whatnot, because that's not everybody's end goals. They don't tell you the whole story. They might not tell you the income, how much income they get from being an artist versus building a course. So it's not always, I'll be very careful if um, you see something that's being promoted. And like, being a part-time is good enough. If it's good, if that's the choice that you want to make between you and your family. So um, it's definitely not something that fully glam.
Yeah, um I wanted to talk about this point specifically because like we see it so much on Instagram. Like those, it's always a reel, it's always an ad, it's a sponsored something, and they have 10 seconds to get your attention. Um and it's always about making six figures. It's
Mhm.
always about quitting your day job. Oh, quitting your 9 to 5. Like, 9 to 5 sucks so much. Like, it's always like trying to like put artists like in this bucket of like, oh, you must do this full time, otherwise you're not successful. You like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you can't make it by doing this solely as your only job, then it's not good enough. Um, and it's just like it's very sensationalized. It's like, wow, like this is how I did it and you can too. I just think that it's good to be aware that, and thank you to Lisa and Michelle for sharing your story, because I think it's so important to talk about it, that it's not a, like you said, not it's not just about the money. And B, like you, it's not a promise of income. Like now that you would consider yourself successful, right? 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it's not like somebody, it's not like, 2024 to Lisa went back in time and say like, hey, like I promise you it's good on this side. Like you didn't have that promise. You just you took a risk because you thought that this was going to lead you down a better path, and then you didn't have um any promises on the other end. But and I think that's important for people to know, that if they're making this decision to not make it lightly, like you have to have backups, you have to have something, you have to have savings or circumstances in your family that allow you to make this choice. And it's never a promised success. You might
It's
work
not.
at it You might work at it for 6 months or a year and figure out like, oh man, like that just really wasn't for me. Like it killed me to try to make it, and now I'm in a worse spot. Like that's possible too. Um, so yeah, I think it's a very untalked about thing where we're always focused on the success story and we just
Yeah.
kind of don't discover the other side.
Yeah. Yo, I was ready to be a starving artist. A starving full-time artist. I was so ready. That's how traumatized I was. Uh, um,
Oh my
but
gosh.
yeah.
Just put you in a park and you'll do like caricatures. That's what you were ready to
No,
do.
seriously, yeah. It's literally like but yeah, the journey wasn't easy at all, I will say. I definitely worked much more hours as a full-timer than with my corporate job, but I've always enjoyed every single part of it. So that's to me that is what success is about. Like I enjoy what I'm doing. And
Mm,
like your day job could be something that you enjoy too, that you do not have to let that go, right? It's just I think again that's important. Like it works for you, then that's the best decision that you could ever make.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I was like going back to the starving artist thing. I actually lost money for the first year. Like it went a little bit negative and I was scared. But that's when you find something that you love, like it and you like it, you enjoy it so much that it doesn't even matter. Like you just keep doing it as long as you can sustain that. I was like you, Talisa. I had like 6 months of like, okay, I'm safe for this time. And then from there, you kind of have to make a decision like, is this something I want to keep doing? Can I keep doing it? Like, is there enough funds to sustain the bills while I continue my passion? But like, for me, being in my last job, I was so traumatized by like all the COVID stuff. Like, I don't want to be there either. So, yeah, it pushed us, right? You get pushed to
Yeah.
doing something different.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And yeah, and to me, like if I can make enough to make a living, that's good enough for me.
Mhm.
And and I think and yeah, so that it works out for me and it works out for my family, and that's what matters. The third assumption is for a full-time artist is that people assume that we have unlimited free time.
you don't?
Oh my God.
Aren't you just like chilling at
Yeah,
home,
doing
Yeah.
spending
nothing.
8 hours doing nothing, watching TV, just like hanging
And
out?
catching up shows.
Yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
No, unfortunately, no. You could be though. Once you've established yourself, yes, you can, maybe. But I think when you become a full-timer, because income becomes so unpredictable, you just don't put all eggs in one basket. You start to diversify your income. So you can be doing events, you can be doing commissions, having a course, all that. Which and then if you do more, like you when you diversify your income, you're also doing more admin work, more marketing, right? And if you're doing podcasts, you're also doing more stuff. So it's like it ended up being you don't have a lot of free time anymore. And I think um unlimited free time, no. Flexibility, yes. You do have a lot of flexibility of what you want to do in a day, because again, you're on your own boss, whatever. But it doesn't mean that you have more free time.
It may look like that when we show up at every single holiday and party and all that stuff, but we
Like,
specifically block that time off. Like if I'm
yeah,
gonna go to a party at night, I'm gonna work all day, all morning, and then make it look like I didn't do anything. Go to the
yeah.
party.
Again, social media doesn't show everything. right? All the busy stuff, all the stuff that we are taking care of. Um, it looks like we're having fun, but it's like there's so much work behind it
Right.
that doesn't get noticed.
Yeah, we should do more like
Yeah.
reality versus Instagram. Oh,
Yeah. Sometimes you want to do that. Like I
right?
want to show like behind the scene, but doing that itself, that's a lot of work. Like, like propping your camera and then like this is a day in a life of like a full-time artist. Like I want to do that, but that takes more time and I'm just like don't have time to do that. I still have to do all these admin work. That it takes a lot more time because you don't like even though you have your templates, you have all that, it's still like, decision making and all that stuff. That takes time.
hmm
So
And then sometimes all the inquiries come in at once, and then 1 minute you're not busy, and then all of a sudden you're like super busy trying to do all these things.
yeah.
It's like never steady. It's always like
It's yeah.
up and down.
And
And
you're
you
just
keep
you're a one person show, and you're just trying to
exactly.
cover off all these jobs and roles within your company by yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is too much. What, like, why am I for the photographer today? Like, why am I the PR person today? Why?
Yeah. Today I'm a business development. Tomorrow I am an accountant. And it's
And
like,
today I'm a podcaster at midnight. Like and that doesn't even
yeah.
pay us any dollars.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So there's a lot of investment in time I am hearing into a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Yes. Definitely. Yep. So I think those are the stuff that we want to share as a full timer, the assumptions that people have. Um, let's
That's
talk
why
about,
you needed that's why you needed July off, you know?
yeah.
Your whole company gets a break. All the different jobs.
Everybody
Everybody go
take a
on holiday.
vacation.
But no, it's really good that you mentioned that there is that flexibility. Like everybody wants flexibility now, you know? It's
Mhm,
2024. We want to work the way we want to work. Um,
mhm,
and that can really provide it. If you're in a position to take advantage of that, like it's amazing to set your own day, set your own year. Um, that's that's so cool. I really admire that.
mhm. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about part-time, Isabel. So can you tell us, if people don't know the background of your two careers? Tell
Yeah.
us a little more about it.
So let's define part-time while piggybacking off of what we define full-time as. So we said that full-time jobs typically take you 30 hours a week or more. So part-time, I in my mind anyway, that's how I like to define it, is anything less than that. So you can be a freelancer and you're doing something else, and you're splitting your waking hours between freelancing and something else, or two or three something else's. You can have many part-time jobs. Um,
Mhm,
but yeah, so as long as you're splitting your time between freelance work and something else, I think that qualifies as a part-time
part-time.
artist. And then one special little subsect of a part-time would be what we like to term like side hustlers, right? Um,
Yeah.
is when like side hustling intuitively is something that's on the side, there's something that's smaller, right? So I want to differentiate between part-time artists and side hustling, which implies that your part-time is a small piece of your
Mhm,
whole picture. And that's probably like a good lead in to how I would say that I started with side hustling and now have ditched that term for myself.
mhm,
In the beginning, I would say like, oh yeah, I'm taking like this project, I'm doing this and that, and it's just kind of like cute, fun bonus money for me. Like, oh, like I don't need it, but this is really cool. Like I want to do a commission job for $500 and like that's awesome. money that I didn't have before. That's what I feel like I started out as a side hustler, right? But then over time, it's grown and grown and grown. And now I almost want to say, which I still won't, I almost want to say I have two full-time jobs.
It does
But that's
feel
not,
like
I mean, that's not the case because it's not as if I spend, like twice the amount of time.
hours.
Yeah, twice the amount of hours in like my entire day. I'm not like awake for 20 hours a day trying to accomplish two jobs. Like it really is that, let's call it the 8-hour workday. I'm just splitting that 8 hours between two things. Um, and it's grown to be a piece where this year I'll probably finish off where the two are equal. So that's a big difference to what I had last year. Like it was a
Mhm.
definitively smaller piece, but now I'm like, okay, now we're kind of on par. I want to call it just two jobs. I have two
Yeah.
jobs. I'm no longer just picking up projects here and there that may or may not mean something to me. Now it's, big enough that I'm like, wow, like this is a thing that's no longer just projects on the side. Now I'm considering, well, okay, so taking this time off means taking this time away from the family, doing that. And now I'm like having to balance things out, really considering this income for the family rather than just like, oh, like I can buy myself something nice this month because I did a job, right? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, sorry, that was a really long ramble.
No, it's good to give some context,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So does your job have some flexibility in terms of the hours? Like your
Yeah,
regular
very much
job?
so. My other job is in finance and it wasn't always flexible. And I would say 2020 kind of changed everything for the
Yeah.
entire financial industry where everybody did in fact go remote. And then once we had the technology in place that we could all work remotely, it was very easy to kind of keep going in that trajectory where we can just kind of pick up and go. And eat breakfast, do a piece of work, and then go drop my kid off at school and then come back and do another thing. And that has become habit for most of us. And so it
Nice.
is really, yeah, it is really flexible now. And I mean, finance is like a very general word for like a million different jobs under it. But
Mhm. Mhm.
but for me, um, it's I would say I'm kind of poking in and out all day long, but I'm not having to like eyes on screen for 5 hours. So it's like
Right.
it's not a time commitment that will prevent me from doing other things.
Right.
So it is really flexible in that way. And also I work with Eastern hours
Mhm.
with the stock market. So it's kind of like, yeah, if I start early, like I'm really ending my day like quite early too in the early afternoon. And then I can get a load of like emails done in the art job.
Mhm.
Usually that's when I
Wow.
pick it up is like afternoon. That's when I'm replying everybody.
Mhm.
So yeah.
That's pretty sweet to have like the time works out to both flexible hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like because I have two flexible jobs, it equals one very fully packed schedule, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you have a kid. So it's
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
wow.
Uh,
So tell us like the assumptions that
okay,
people
so
have.
I kind of introduced one, but I think the first assumption that we make with a part-time artist is that you assume that it's a smaller piece of the whole picture. That it's like the first, like how I started. It's just like, oh, I'm doing this quote unquote on the side. So I'm just kind of like, am I really committed? I'm not. Am I taking a job? Oh, okay, it's just for fun. It's like no low commitment. Um, but yeah, like I just wanted to talk about how that's really not always the case. Like, so many times in the DMs, people will ask me like, "Oh, like I'm just curious. Like, do you do this full time?" I'll say no, and 100% of the time, people are shocked, like shocked and floored, like, but you do this and like it just looks like you're doing so much work. Like I totally 100% assume that you did this full time. And as soon as they say that, I don't do this, but in my mind, I have a reflex to want to say like, okay, but so now that you know, what assumption have you made about me, right? Like
Yeah.
now that you know I'm not a full-time artist, like now are you thinking like, oh my God, like I totally thought something something something, right? Like you just don't know. And one example of that is like a friend of mine. She is a full-time freelancer, or was for a number of years, and then it was just like the seasonality and unpredictability of jobs was just like it was too much. Like really like um heavy work for a period of time, and then it would just be like dead for the next 6 months, and that is like really tough for some people to deal
Yeah.
with, like on a personality basis, or like personal income circumstances, budget reasons, or whoever, whatever it might be. But so she made the decision like, oh, I'm just gonna go pick up like an office job. And so the office job was actually her side job, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
she,
Interesting.
she's
Yeah.
a full answer.
Opposite.
Did I just say full answer?
Well, that's
That's a new term we just coined. She was a full answer. Um, and then she just was like, I'm gonna get a second job, and it's gonna be a small thing, but it'll just give me that like monthly paycheck that I can rely on, and then also like to help out with benefits and stuff like that. Like you can have a small paying stable job that helps you with a lot of other things, and freelancer is
yeah.
still like your passion, that's your goal, that's your whole thing. But maybe like being a full-time freelancer just wasn't your thing, or the industry just doesn't serve you the right way. So like that's totally possible. That the freelancing job is like the main thing,
Mhm.
even for
I'm
a part-time.
I'm so shocked that it was like the opposite. You want to assume that the stable job is like the
The
thing
main
that's
one.
the main one. And then I never thought that her freelancing would be like the ultimate full time. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because like social media is like really really fun and really engaging, but it also works really well for certain industries, right? Like I'm not here social mediaing my finance job. Like I wouldn't find that interesting to make content for me. But it's like, because that's the thing I'm creating content about and putting out into the world. It's like the image of me that's projected is like, this is who I am, and they don't know anything else about me. So the assumption is reasonably that I'm a full-time artist, right? Um, and for somebody whose freelancing job is really small piece of their whole picture, that reality is like really skewed, right?
Mhm.
I just think that's really interesting.
That's so interesting.
And I think social
What?
media, like, we want to hate on our jobs. Like, you see everybody like, oh, the 9 to 5 grind. I gotta go back there. Oh, my boss. And like, they say all these things. So you want to assume that people always hate their jobs. But it's very rare that people come on social media and say, like, I love my 9 to 5. Like, you don't hear people saying that. So I think that's where a lot of the assumption comes from. Like, it's what
Yes.
we see.
Yeah.
It's so true. And like that's the thing you just described is like one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate when people do that.
I
If
think
you
I think the people who are have enough time to do social media, it's because they're not normally a full timer, like a day job, because you're just so busy, you don't have enough time. So you don't hear that enough. People who are like doing a regular 9 to 5. Like my husband's, he's a regular 9 to 5, but he's not on social media. So you don't get to hear that. You don't get to hear people who are like actually enjoy their regular like traditional job, and and I think that's the assumption is like, oh, you think it's not so fun, but some people actually like it. um
Some people actually like it, but also I might add that why you might see me like kind of dance around the topic of my job is because there's a lot of things I can't say about it. Like there's just so many things I cannot put publicly about my
yeah,
job.
yeah, makes sense.
It's one of those things where like confidentiality is a thing. I just
Yeah.
can't speak very much about it.
Mhm.
Um, and because of that, like I'm definitely not putting any more than I've already said, out loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm definitely not the person who's gonna say like, oh, back to the grind, 9 to 5. Like I might say the occasional like, oh, Monday, but but like I quite enjoy my finance job.
Yeah.
And we've probably talked about this before in other episodes where like I like having to switch my brain like back and forth and like keeping sharp about numbers and like knowledge about taxes or investments and stuff like that. Like I think that just keeps it interesting for me and keeps my mind sharp.
Mhm. Well, that's good using both part of your brains.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's brain
See,
exercise.
not all part-timers are working towards becoming full-time. That is that's the assumption that a lot of
Yeah,
people like to
that's the
make.
underlying thing. Yeah, it's true because people do ask me that all the time. And I don't think anybody, first of all, I don't think anybody means anything negative by it. It's something that when I take it negatively, I know it's about me. It's not them. But people do ask, like, oh, are you gonna quit your job? Like, oh, I think like your art job is like taking over. Like, will you ever go full time? And it's just always a question that comes up, right?
Yeah, interesting.
And
Yeah.
and again, it's like that thing where it's like, are you full time or are you part time? Where I feel like if I give an answer, it's like, okay, now what? Now what are you thinking about me, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to quit my job, and they're usually the reaction again is a surprise, like really, but like I think you can make it. And I'll usually say, yeah, I probably could, but I just don't want to.
And it's a choice.
It's my choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me it's like I said, it's fun to keep both sides of my brain working and doing things I like. I love being good with numbers. So it's it's just my personal choice, and
Yeah.
going full time, I won't say never, but it probably won't be my goal ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's totally cool to like have, passion for both. And I think that's really awesome to have.
I do. Yeah. I mean, if
Yeah.
you talk to me about personal finance or investments, like I can also talk for 2 hours on a podcast. Like it'll be
Oh,
less
Isabel's gonna
interesting,
come up
but
with her own podcast about like investment.
there's like personal finance, retirement planning, yada yada yada.
Oh my God.
Taking
There's
questions
another
now.
there's another assumption that I think a lot of people always make when it comes to part-time. It's like when you said oh, it's like I don't really need it, like there are sometimes some part-timers see it's like a cutesy hobby thing, and then they'd be like, no, it's okay, it's not my full-time job, so it's like I'll take this job for low, like, it just, and I think that's
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I have dealt with that even like firsthand sometimes. I think like I don't know, people love to make assumptions,
Mhm.
period. But when it comes to like undercutting or lowballing, I think that it can happen in a conversation where it's like, oh, I think like this person charged X amount because oh, I think it's just a side job for her. Like that can occur in the same sentence, right? It's like, oh, I
Mhm.
think like this person undercharged because this, and that. Oh, like it's probably because it's just like a side gig, or oh, that
Yeah,
she just
just
like
for
doesn't need a
fun.
job. So,
Yeah.
um, and that sucks. I think like why are we attaching the two things together? You know, if we undercutting is obviously a very predatory behavior. Nobody wants that in our community. But we shouldn't be assuming anything about this person based on that behavior, right? Like that's a
Mhm.
comes down to like a matter of integrity and personality. Like
Yeah.
it's not to do with full-time, part-time, whatever it is. A person who's going to charge the right price, even if they just do 5 projects a year, that happens. I
Yeah.
promise you.
And it should happen that way.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, if it were like someone doing part-time, I don't think you should be lowballing because you already have very little time to juggle two jobs, and it would make sense to charge even higher because you could be spending time with your family than like spending your time doing another job. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's true.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like part of my flexibility is being able to work evenings and weekends, which fits really well with live events. So for me, I actually, Talisa, I think you and I had this conversation on chat the other day where like I actually prefer shorter jobs, you know, like a couple
Shorter
hours,
hours. Yeah.
like 2, 3 hours in the evening or on the weekend. And I'd rather do it for like, you know, a higher hourly rate, smaller total ticket. But that takes me less time to accomplish rather than like, you know, sometimes you get those like 8 hour days you sit in a store and wow, that's nice from like a total ticket perspective. I'm taking the whole day away from being able to do anything else where I've already committed so much time to doing like another job, right?
Mhm.
So taking like a whole day out is not ideal for me. But I realized that like those long days are actually really ideal for people who have that capacity, right?
Mhm. Mhm. No, yeah. Yeah. I agree. And let's talk about like how personally the three of us, since we all came from like different background, we all have different how do I say it? Like different, I guess, situations and whatnot. So you touch upon like, your decision, but just like explain us to the listeners, like how did you decide that you wanted to be full time and how is it going so far?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
what challenges that you face now? Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna share my whole journey about like how this came to be, but you guys already know that I'm full time and that happened and like right around COVID. Um, and I was still working at the hospital, so I worked there for a long time. And I always knew that I wanted to do business and I've always loved art, like even before I started working at the hospital. And my goal that I've always had for myself was like nursing is just a stepping stone for me. Like it was an accomplishment for school and a career, and I was good at it, but that was never my end goal. I never wanted to finish there. And so with that in the back of my mind, like a lot of things happened throughout the years, and this was what I saw throughout my whole career as a nurse. Like you see tons of life and you see death, and that's just part of it. And it was more apparent during COVID. And I think it made everybody, especially healthcare workers, think about your mortality. And it's just what comes with the job. So in my mind, I told myself if something were to happen to me tomorrow, like if it was my time, I don't want to be stuck at a job that I didn't love and I wasn't passionate about. And from that realization, I made the switch in my mind at that time to just go full time. So it wasn't even about money. Like I knew I was going to lose money. Like I was making such good money at the hospital, but it was a matter of like, what do I want to do that's going to actually make me happy? What am I going to love and be passionate about? Because that wasn't nursing at all. And so when it came to art, it was something that I truly loved, like owning my own business after how many failed businesses to having this now and actually getting to do art and making other people happy with my art was like so much more meaningful to me. And it like fulfilled that part of me that none of my jobs or businesses have ever done before. And it was so I was so happy that like I was happy to like the first 6 months, bad money lost. Like you want to talk about starving artists, like that was me. Like
Oh my
no
God.
traveling. You don't do as many things. Like you stop going out to eat as much. You try to like make sure that you have enough money because you don't know when it's going to come in. And that was huge for me because you don't know what you're doing is going to be successful or not. But
Mhm.
I think because I quit and then I was like, well, I need to, it's like do or die. Like you have no choice. And with
Mhm.
that in my mind, I was like, I'm going to make this work. So I tried so many different things. And I've been so lucky. I, with everything that I've done. It was just, I just want to, it was luck. A lot of it is being lucky.
Mhm.
But also there was a lot of support at that time. And now, today, being after being full time for a few years now, I think a lot of the challenges I still think about that. Like, you don't really know when your next paycheck is coming. You want to make sure that you're going to be okay for a certain amount of time. Um, and then also because it's a business, you always have to, or for me, I always think like, okay, I have to be creative. I have to think of like new ideas. I have to do different things so that
Mhm.
I will still get hired. Or like you just trying to be creative. Like I think freedom is exciting, but also really scary because
Scary,
you
yeah.
control everything. You control the way that you speak and speak with brands. You control the way that you do events and the way you follow up and the way you keep that relationship because no one tells you how to do that. But all of those little things matter. And I think just having that thought of like, I have all this freedom. What am I going to do with it to make the most of it? That's like really hard for me to think about sometimes because I have so many ideas in my mind, but I don't know how to bring it all together and make use of the time. And then because I have so many ideas, sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna take a nap. Like, there's too much going on. And
You
then
know what I think you need?
uh,
I think you need one of those like crazy mood board things in your office
uh,
where you put like all your ideas on a post-it and like put it all over. And just like you have that like mood board mind map all the time to look at. Be like, these are the important things, these are the whatever, and just
Yeah.
like, yes, like totally right there on that wall.
yeah. No, yeah, I have a huge space right here. That's such a good idea. I think
Yeah.
Talitha knows because when we were coming up with the course, I'm like, Talitha, this idea, this. And she was like, wait, let me put it down. So it's so much ideas, but it's good and bad. And I it'll happen. I like to do things. The thing I like about myself that's also really scary is like I'm super impulsive. And when I just do things, I put everything into it. Like if I'm gonna do this, it's gonna be done. And then sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it
Yeah.
does. But
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that I actually did it. Like, okay, now what's my next impulsive move? So it's good and bad. I really love it. So
I think they're all good. I think they're all
yeah,
good. I don't think any of them is a bad thing. I think that's part of being an entrepreneur, a business owner. You like need to be able to be comfortable doing something that like you don't know how if it's going to turn out well, but at least you have that experience and you learn from that experience, and then you know how to uh create a better solution the next time. So I don't think any of them is a bad thing. I think they're just like it's a very ideal personality to have as a business owner.
I think so. I think it's fun for me. I'm like that friend who is
Yeah.
like, we're gonna go on this zip line today. And I I didn't think about it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just go.
You're yeah, so from the way that you explain your experience and your journey, it sounds like you are comfortable taking risk. So, and I think, and everybody has different level of risk tolerance. And sometimes that's the reason why people choose to do full time or part-time or whatever. Then it makes sense now.
Yeah, you explained that so
And
well to Lisa.
yeah. Because I'm also the same. I'm a very high risk tolerant when it comes to a lot of things since I was a child. Like I've always been comfortable taking risk. Um, I think it's from my upbringing. My dad's always been like that. My whole family actually has always been like a lot of people in my family are actually like entrepreneur business owners, like really like high risk takers. So like I grew up with that, so I'm comfortable doing that. And then that's probably the reason why I'm comfortable doing this full time, even though I have like a handful of clients,
Yeah.
like no income for like a few months.
Mhm.
And then like you, like the first few months, like I had savings, but our spending was very, very modest. Like we didn't do traveling for like 2 years. Like we didn't do anything like like fun. Like we're very, very like tight budget. And but even though we had a very modest like lifestyle, I love every single second of like building the business. I enjoy like learning about marketing, about social media, about like, all that stuff. And then it was like it was very fulfilling to me. So um was it harder than like HR? Yeah, it was because I had no like textbook about how to be a full-time artist. And so it was like a lot of making mistakes, a lot of, um trying different things. And I think being comfortable of making mistakes is just like it's always been in and my personality, and I think that's why it helps so much. And at the same time, those are the challenges, like, like it's very unpredictable. I don't know what's happening in 2 months. I don't know what's happening next year. I don't know. But there are things that you could, as a business owner, do that you can control, like keeping relationship with your client and all that. My challenges now, like today, is very different from my challenges like 2, 3 years ago. Right. It just changes every year. The more that you grow, the more the different services that you provide, it just keeps changing, and then you keep learning and how to deal with that challenges. Like I'm currently, because of um the lack of job security, for lack of better terms, I find it really hard to say no to jobs that come along to me when I know that I'm available. Like a week ago, I had to work 6 consecutive days in a row. Like I had 6 events in August. That never happened. That usually happened in December. So it was really hard for me to say no because like the three of those clients are new clients. So like um and there's always that, fear of being replaced. And it was also at the same time I feel like I need to prove myself. I need to show like I can do this job. But I don't see that as me being overbooked, because at the end of the day I have like a max capacity of how many bookings I can do within a month. Then I can start saying no. I can like, have like reasons to say no. But sometimes, yeah, it comes like crazy like that. But yeah, that consistent or inconsistent booking is always in the back of my mind. Because every single job that comes to you as a freelancer, it's project based, it's very short term. So there's no concrete promise that when the next job is, I'm comfortable now for the next 2 months. I don't know what's happening in January. I don't know what's happening in February, but looking at the trends, it's been consistent, thankfully, but I'll never know what's gonna happen in the world. I'll never know what's gonna happen in the next 2, 3 years. So there's always that, worry.
When you said out of those 6 days, three were new clients, like not saying, even considering saying no is saying no to that day, but also knowing potentially that new client could be like your next big relationship.
A repeat client. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
you don't know what you're saying no to. It's not just like, do I want to work this Saturday for 4 hours? It's like, am I turning down a client that could give me 10 more jobs? Like
Exactly.
it's very scary to think about
Yeah.
potential that you're losing.
Yeah. And like the thing is that with like working with corporates and brands, there's always, and then like PR agencies, like there's always a lot of like opportunities for repeat, right? And that happens a lot because they always have their own clients, and then this is the stuff that they do. They always have events every season and whatnot. But when it comes to like private clients, like weddings, or like that's usually like a one-time thing. Like people can usually get married once, right? Or like people have one baby shower or bridal shower. So like if you don't lose it, like it's fine. And there's always other clients. But when it comes to like the kind of client that could potentially be repeat clients, like I gotta maintain my I gotta, this like I always feel like I need to make a good impression. Right. So it's like if the opportunity has arrived to me, I should take it. Like um if I can do it right at my capacity. So yeah.
I also wanted to point out that like when you first started, you said you were like starving artist. And then today it's like such a blessing that you have all these inquiries and you're so booked and busy. And I mean, it is tiring, but like your whole journey that you've been on, it's like now we have new sets of problems that we have to work around, good problems.
Mhm.
But I think it's amazing that you're like in demand now. Like you built this business and now everybody wants your services.
Yeah. Well, not everybody, but but I
A
am
lot.
grateful. I'm grateful. I think it also because I provide very diverse
Mhm.
of like, service, like me and like Isabel, like so are you, right? Like, I do portrait illustration, fashion illustration, engraving, calligraphy, painting, and I can perform that well. And that's probably, and some of my clients know me as an illustrator. Some of my clients know me as a calligrapher. So it's like because of like the different I guess diverse, is it a diversity? Like I don't know. Um that makes it easy for me to book different kinds of jobs and different kind of clients. And it didn't come easy at all. There are thousands of hours that are not published at all where I had to work hard to get to where I am today. So there is not a single hack, not there's so many courses out there, but none of them are hacks. Like you still have to put your time and effort to be able to, perform.
Mhm. And that's the part we don't see on social media.
No, we don't. We don't share that.
Yeah.
But we talk about it.
Now we can, yes.
Yeah.
Now we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So, so that's being a full time. Now, Isabel,
Yes.
let's talk about your journey in terms of like the mindset that comes when you decide to do two jobs, to have two jobs.
I think I'll start by, because we were kind of discussing about risk tolerance.
Yeah.
This brainstorming for this particular episode forced me to remember a story that I will share.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I've shared with you guys yet, but when um when I was in school, in university, studying finance, I had a particular interest in law school.
Oh, nice.
And I really enjoyed my law classes in school. I took a few and I really liked learning law. And that's not rare. A lot of people enjoy law class. And there was one point where after class, I did talk to my professor. She was very personable, very easy to talk to, and I kind of just like wanted um her perspective and opinion on like what that might look like if I pursued law school or law as a career. And she was like, "Well, like why do you think you want to do that as a job?" And I was like, "I just like I'm so fascinated by the topics that we're learning in class. Like I really enjoy it. I'm really engaged. I just think this would be like really cool as a job." As like 20-year-old me like derping about
Law.
um she's like, "Oh my God, this is so cool. I really like love all these cases that we're studying." And she was trying to like put me into reality in the nicest way possible. She was like, "I want you to remember that the cases that we study are like the funnest cases. They're the most interesting. They're the most engaging. Like we pick out these examples from real life because they're fun to study, they're fun for me to teach." And then she like talked about how like if you went into a career in law, um, you would have to be very, very specialized. And you would probably be working in the like narrowest of focus of a particular type of law, and you would have to be like excellent at this little niche. And that's what people hire lawyers for solving a very specific problem. And you are good at that problem. So you are going to get hired for that problem. And as soon as I heard that, I was kind of like, oh, that sounds awful. Like, and so she's like, I don't want you to pursue law school because you think the learning part is fun. I want you to pursue law school if you think the job is going to fit you. And that was like, a lot to chew on for a 20-year-old. So I like thought about it, and I still thought like, okay, I think I'm gonna still look into it. So I go and buy my LSAT study book and I start working through the problems and I'm like preparing for this exam, right? Because you have to take an entrance exam, you have to score high to get into law school. Okay, so I'm looking at this book, I'm studying through it, and at some point, my brain just stopped and said, like, what if I don't even get a good score on this exam? What if I can't even get into law school if I wanted to do it? And then finally I kind of like took the way out where I was like, no, I'm just not even gonna touch it. So I like kind of put it away and was like, I am, upon reflection of like this whole decision not to pursue law school, I realize I am just not a risk taker. I just like
Oh,
I see this thing that could like potentially be good for me, potentially not. But then the downside of it takes me out of it, takes me out of the decision. I'm like, nope, I'd rather not do it because I don't want it to potentially go bad. So
right.
I didn't even take the test. I didn't even find out what I could have scored. Maybe I could have done well. I don't know. Maybe I could have got into law school. I don't know. But I think I just like didn't want like the heartbreak of knowing like I didn't get a good score, or like I applied for law schools and couldn't get in, and then now what? Now I'm gonna settle for plan B. Like I think something about that whole process just scared me. But through these like life experiences. Again, like looking back on how I got into the job that I'm in, and then taking up art projects and then getting paid for it, and like slowly getting my feet wet into the industry, and then growing from it, was like the safest, most most risk averse thing that I could do, or like the least amount of risk that I could take into this career or this path, where I'm like, I have an established career, and now I have some free time. Yay me. Like, what do I do with that free time? Oh, I could do this. I could do a little bit more. I could do a little bit more. And then I just take on more and more. And at this point, I'm at capacity. I can't do anymore. Even doing the podcast, just like, oh, it's just like talking with you guys, and I like brainstorming and chatting, and spin ideas. But even this is like, oh, it's 10 p.m. on like a weeknight. Like, I'm there. Like, I'm at the top of my capacity. I can't
Capacity,
do
yeah.
anymore. I'm max capacity. But like, in terms of risk, like that was my journey. Looking, like, reflecting on this, is just like, this was just possibly the safest way I could get into art, without putting anything on the table. You know what I mean?
We are so different in that way.
Right?
I was like, oh my God, why? The closest thing that I came to like taking a risk of any kind was when I was about to quit my like previous finance job without another job lined up, which is like not that not that terrible, but like, to me that was very risky. But it didn't end up that way. I had kind of last minute found a job that would like coincide, and then I started the other job like pretty much right away. um and that was pure luck. Um but yeah, like, just looking back, I and now I still wouldn't. I'm just like, I'm just never gonna be in that position to be like, what? I don't think I need my pension. Like, it's fine. I don't think that I could say that. When I'm asked the question, like, are you gonna quit your job? I'm like, are you kidding me? I have benefits. I got a stable paycheck. Like, what am I quitting for? You know? So that's kind of interesting now that I like look back. I'm just a safe player.
Yeah.
I'm not here to take big risks.
And that's totally fine. And I think that's like,
Yeah.
it works well for you, and then it works well for your family. And then, like, like, everybody has a different risk tolerance. And then this works out really well to have too. So you have, like, if anything happens to any of the jobs, you have something. Right?
Yes, exactly. That's what I like to call a hedge.
Did you feel like you were always risk adverse, or was it that big event with the law school that made you realize that this is how you are?
I think in general, I'm just not a risk taker, but specifically when we were talking about career paths, that was the story that came right to mind. When I was like, you know what? Like, that's probably the place where I could have made like a very like life altering decision to go a different way. But why it didn't happen was because I didn't want to take the risk.
Yeah,
Like, very
that's awesome.
simple. I just didn't want. I was just trying to protect myself in that. Whereas like, oh, I already have an offer letter to go to business school. Like, what am I turning that down for? Like, you know what I mean? That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Like, when faced with like the stable, safe
Options,
choice
yeah.
and the like scary choice, I'm like, I'll take safe, please. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I also wanted to, you guys talked about some challenges
Yeah.
in your
Full time,
current
yeah.
day life. Yeah, like, now that I'm really at full capacity per se, I do find that when I'm switching from like one job to another, like, it is a challenge. I'm kind of like, oh, like, forget about this math for a second. Like, I'm going to respond to this email because that requires my immediate attention. Doing that is tough to this day.
Yes.
So like prioritizing tasks and, managing my time is something I'm still working on. And, sometimes while I'm trying to do both jobs, like I have both computer screens open sometimes. And then there's somebody yapping at you, like, I want a snack, mom. Like, it's like, oh, my third
Oh
job's
my God, you
talking.
have
Hold
like
on.
three heads. Oh God. I don't know how you do it, man. Like
I know.
that takes a lot of
Juggling.
skill set to be able to multitask like that.
Yeah, it's something that my finance job has trained me for years and years. Like I've been doing that job close to 15 years. But it's like Michelle will know the term triaging. But it's like when something comes in my brain, I immediately label it. Like, is this a right now thing? Or is it a later thing? Or is it like a tomorrow thing? It's like anything that comes up, I will think of that first. So that helps a lot. It's like, is this red, orange, or green? Like,
So
is
Color
it
code
ditch
everything.
everything and handle this now?
Oh,
No,
like the
it's
snacks,
not.
it's a red thing.
The snack is definitely red. It's like deal with it now or problems. Yeah.
Or like tantrum, yeah.
Yeah. I just find it amazing. Like you have two different jobs. Like Talisa was saying, like you're literally switching from right brain to left brain. Like it's
Like
totally opposite. Like finance, like it's not even the same thing. And you're able to do it.
Yeah, there's zero overlap, let me tell you.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
wow. But that's amazing though, I think to be able to do that. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all your experience and journey and challenges. I think we all can learn from it. Let's talk about actionable advice now on about the full time and part time. Um, whether you're making decision or like you're comfortable where you are now. Um, I think it's best to look at the situation that you're in and look at the support system that you have. Capitalize on that.
Use
Whether
them.
yeah, whether that support system is coming from yourself or coming from a family, coming from like, your partner, your parents and whatnot, definitely capitalize on that. Um, and see and look at your personality. We talk about each of us talk about the risk tolerance and risk as averse. So like, where are you at? What's your risk tolerant level in terms of like income specifically? Like, do you care? Like, are you like me and Michelle, where we're just like, we're ready to be starving artists, where you're like, or like you're like Isabel, I'm like, I need
I was not. I was
to
not. I
hold
was shaky hands. I
on.
was like, I don't want to start.
Ready to risk it all. Just,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or like, nope, I need two solid things with me. Like, you and then you can like assess on that, know yourself, know your own. Like in finance term, there's a KY. What is it?
I see.
KYC, know your client. What's your risk tolerance? I'm
It's your risk
definitely,
tolerance. Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, sorry, finish.
So I was gonna say that I'm definitely like okay with volatility. I'm comfortable with that. So, but it's like it's a personality thing. But yeah, go on. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, like, risk tolerance is something that we can say words about, but if you are able to quantify it, it's very helpful. So, like, if I gave you the scenario, like, hey, we're gonna go to the casino tonight. You have $100 in hand. How much are you willing to lose? And that can change based on like who you ask, right? I'm willing to bet that Talisa and Michelle are willing to lose all $100. Bet it on something.
Disposable, right?
Why else are we going there?
And I'm here like I will use $50 to buy myself a meal, and then I have $50 left, and then I'm willing to risk $20 of it. Like
We're like, oh, we're so hungry, we lost some.
you lost your $100. You're like, Isabel, can you buy me dinner?
Or we could be the ones that win the lottery
And then like ended up getting a grand.
Exactly. So yeah, you just you just don't know like who sometimes if you can't like quantify in your head, using these examples really help. But yeah, like going back to your point about support systems, like people are probably going to be more willing to help you out than you realize, you know? When I was sort of like starting to get more bookings or like more events, it became a concern. Like, I don't know if I should. Like, I'm obviously it was a discussion with my husband about it and like childcare and stuff like that. And he was always like very supportive about it. It's like book whatever you want to book, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like have the conversation. Like you don't know where you're at until you know where you're at, right? Or like let's say it's not your partner, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your friends. Like some of these wedding jobs that I have coming up, I've asked like my personal friends to come and help me out instead of like looking for an assistant myself, maybe a stranger or somebody not already in my close network. I think it's important just to look around and see like who's willing to like stand in your corner and like support you, and um you might have more capacity than you realize.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree.
I like that.
And if you have you know, I think I like to think myself as someone who takes calculated risk. Um, Even though I knew that I was gonna be like I was ready to be a starving artist, I had savings and I was very modest with my spending. And I always like we always try to find ways to reduce that risk, right? So like Michelle and I, we both have we've diversified our income by having courses, right? We both have courses together. And yeah, there's so many different ways of how you can earn an income other than just being a live event artist. You know, you can hold workshops, that's another way. Um and events when you're collaborating with corporates or brands, and like and some people like own another business, like you can lease housing and whatnot. So it's just a different just ways of how to maintain income. But I do want to say though, as long as what you do is in your capacity in terms of ability and skills. So what works for some people may not work for you, right? Like if someone is good at like I'm just gonna put an example. If a calligrapher is also a painter, can actually do that. Um, it doesn't mean that you need to do the same thing, right? If you don't like doing it. Just because someone else is doing or someone else is everyone's like doing bottle painting, and I don't like painting, but I want to do it because it's good money. Like that's not a healthy way of diversifying or like reducing risk. Like you're gonna end up hating it because it does take hours and hours and days to practice and whatnot. So make sure that when you are reducing that risk and diversifying your income is within your capacity. Like there is no hack, there is no shortcut when it comes to adding skill. So they
Yeah.
all take a lot of effort.
I think, yeah, just finding something that you like and
Mhm.
then going for it. Like it doesn't have to be what everyone else is doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good to have things that are kind of related. Like if you like calligraphy, then maybe you like engraving. It's kind of the same. But if you don't
Yeah,
like
that's like the same
engraving,
thing. Yeah.
if you don't like any of those, like choose something else. And like for me, I like art, but I also like business. And so
Yeah.
business falls under like so many different other things. And
Mhm.
yeah, I have my business for my art stuff, but I'm also open to like doing other things. Like
Mhm.
Talisa was saying, like it's not just this. We don't just put all our eggs into our basket and have this one thing. You have other things going on at the same time if you want to, and if you
Mhm.
truly like it. And
Mhm.
I also wanted to share some this cool statistic that I found. So
Oh yeah.
like there's so many other people out there who do this freelancing stuff, and I was actually really shocked to see people in different sort of markets. Like you never really know how much people there are doing these things until you take a look. So I found a chart, and it's based on the US market for freelancers. And so this is a 2023 statistics, and they found that 73.3 million people are freelancers in the US. And that number goes up every single year. But when the study was done, that's how many there are. And I wanted to share the top five with you. I just think this is so interesting. So, starting at the bottom, number five, those people are in personal wellness, personal care and wellness services. So, we got 48% of those. And then number four would be construction. Number three would be computers and mathematics. Uh,
Interesting.
computers and mathematics. Can you believe those
Yeah.
people be like freelancers?
I'm assuming it's like people who like web developers,
Yeah. Web
like
developers,
because
like
technology,
graphic
yeah.
designers, or no, that I think that comes
No,
later.
that's considered arts
Yeah.
and design, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Computers.
Like app, like people who
Oh, yeah.
create apps. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah.
These are like very broad categories.
They
They can
are.
probably
Yeah.
include
Very broad. Yeah.
consulting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have them at number three. And then number two is marketing.
Interesting.
That's a huge, huge thing. Like you can do marketing in so many different ways.
Mhm.
And then they rank this as the one with the highest amount of freelancers, and that would be arts and design.
Oh,
So
that's us.
that's us. 77% of the
And
23.
Wow.
I want to just clarify the percentage a little bit because I don't think it was explicitly stated.
Hmm.
This is talking about in each industry, what proportion out of all the people in that industry are freelancers versus not freelancers.
Mhm.
So, like in arts and design, it's what's the percentage? 70,
77 of
77%.
77,
73.3
77
million.
percent of people in arts and design are freelancers, and then the remainder 23% are working for a company or whatever it is. That's what that percentage is talking about. So it's like art in arts and design, nearly everyone is a freelancer.
Yeah, everybody wants a creative freedom. In the arts, which totally makes sense. That's like it feels like
Yeah.
when you're an artist, you want to have that freedom in making decisions. And I could see that because like I noticed that a lot of people um in marketing department in corporates, it is always the highest turnover. They're either ended up creating their own business, starting their own firm, or like they just like it's because they don't have that creative freedom. And it's just a personality thing, I think, as an artist
Yeah.
or anyone who's in marketing. Um, so yeah, that's really interesting thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's us. We're part of the
Us.
Us.
We're in that 77%.
Yeah.
So, just to conclude this episode, we've shared quite a lot in this episode. Hopefully, this was very valuable. The main point is that your situation, your support system, your regional, like wherever you are, all of that factors really, it's completely up to you, whatever it is that you want to decide whether you want to stay full-time or part-time, as long as it makes you happy. And I think whatever choice that you make is the best choice to make. Do not make anyone else feel like you're less just because you're either full-time or part-time.
Yes. And throw away those assumptions that we make about each other and just
Mhm.
get to know the person and their personal circumstances, and like don't make judgments about other people because they're a full-timer or a part-timer. You don't know. You just don't
Yeah,
know.
Ask
you
questions.
don't know.
Don't
Yeah,
assume.
Ask
just ask.
questions. Yeah, just ask. But don't
And no
ask me if
one
I'm
will
going to quit
lie.
my job. No.
You already know the answer.
That question is like an assumption question. Ask like open-ended questions,
Yeah,
you know?
you're right. Thank you for
Yeah.
correcting. That's very
Yeah.
true.
Mhm.
That's a very assumption loaded question. You are right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I hope this episode was very helpful. Next episode, we're gonna talk about how we manage and organize our business through a CRM, client relationship management system. So I think that's going to be really, really helpful. We did have a listener who asked about that topic, and I think it makes sense as a segue because we talk about how we're full time in juggling and like switching, brain sides, and I think it helps to when we talk about how we do it, what
Yeah.
tools that we use to organize
Hmm.
this. So
About inputting those expenses, you know?
yeah.
CRM, that's how.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's gonna be a really good episode as well because I think it might help to for people who are like entering this industry as well. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with us and listening to our episode, and we'll see you next time.